Shalom, everyone. Well, at this point in time, I can say I'm probably about 80 or 90% back from Israel. I got back in last Friday early afternoon and proceeded to get a head cold about Sunday morning, I think it was. And so it's been quite an interesting recovery time. For those of you that followed us through the land, hope you enjoyed that. The videos that are on Facebook will delete automatically after 30 days. But all of the videos that are on Vimeo and also on YouTube, those will stay there as long as we have internet. So for the conspiracy issues, I don't know how long that's going to be. But I had an amazing time. I sat down, I think it was Sunday morning, and tried to do an update that's available online through our website, jointohashem.org. And I have to, first of all, just say the most, and I said this on the recording, but the most difficult thing that I do in recording teachings is coming back from Israel and trying to describe what I experienced in the land, far beyond comprehension. And this time was even greater. What I experienced there with the people, the unity that is in the land, being with IDF soldiers. You see over my shoulder on that side, one of the units that I got to go down to Beersheba and be with them. It is far beyond anything that I can actually put into words, but I did the best I could. There are a couple of interviews that I did with other people on that CD, MP3, depending on how you get it. One of those was with Moshe Kempinski, the other one with Vered Ben Zadon. And so you can order that through our website. Okay, well, back to the routine. And for the person that texted me and said, I missed you for the last 2 weeks, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I did miss sitting down. I was going to try to do a couple of teachings while I was there, but if you followed me through the land, you can imagine there just was not much time. It was action-packed, and the theme of the tour was it's wet, it's rainy, and it's cold. But I made it through the whole thing, and let me just say it like this: being there with the people. Let me give you another little run at this. Being there in the midst of a war. In the midst of everyone who has a story, everyone has a son, a daughter, multiple sons, multiple daughters, friends, cousins, something. Everyone has someone that is in the middle of the fight, that is either on the front lines of Gaza or up north. Understanding that people are on edge as they're watching for their phones, as they're listening for sirens to go off. You never know when the next news report will come out of what is going on. And I have to tell you that coming back this time has been very difficult. I was there at the Lev Yerushalayim Hotel in Israel. And Fox News is actually on, so is CNN. And I got so angry one night that I almost threw the television out the window. Because the lies that were told there, I don't watch CNN or any of those other MSNBC or any of those, the stupidity of them. But it was exactly what I believe 180%. 180 degrees off of the truth. And then even to watch Fox, I told Kathy, I called her and I said, you know, I'm sitting here and I have a choice. I can watch the Israel news and the pictures, and I can't understand a word they're saying. Or I can listen to Fox and I can understand the words. I said, out of the two, the Israel news makes more sense, because it showed what life really is in Israel today and what life may be soon, even here in the United States. I'm having a difficult time even connecting. I feel very disconnected from what is, I always do, but it's even a greater place right now, feeling disconnected from the events. I watch the news. I watch the political circus and the monkeys that are part of it, and it is a circus. It's a three-ring circus that makes absolutely no sense. I listen to what people are talking about today, and it's like you're totally irrelevant in life, and it's just something you go through. To sit in a room, to be in a room of 500 soldiers that have just come out of battle, knowing that they're going back, and I can't converse with them much. A few of them spoke English. Some think they speak English, kind of like I think I speak Hebrew occasionally. But to hear them, and there was no stories. There was no one talking about. They don't talk about what happened, what is happening, but just knowing what these men and women have gone through. And then you come back and you see the stupidity that is the world today. Okay, let me move on. Before I left, I had actually right after I got back, I had a conversation with someone that has really impacted me, and we were discussing the Torah overall and just some lifestyle changes that they have gone through. And one of the people made the statement that it was not until recently that I really saw that Torah taught us intimacy. Now I'm kind of paraphrasing what was said there. That there is an intimacy that is in Torah that they had never seen before. Now this is a person that has worked with IHOP, International House of Prayer, various places, grew up in a Pentecostal church, knows what it's like to have those moments, you know. But they said it was not until recently. It was as if they had come out of this time of intimacy, but then walked into this life of Torah and had lost all of that, thinking that, well, you know, maybe that intimacy thing is not something that is really for us. But then recently, in recent months, maybe in the last year or so, has come to a place of a renewed intimacy that is greater than it has ever been. It got me thinking, is it possible that the Torah has been taught in such a way that Paul was right? The letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. And so many people have been looking at the letters of the law, the letter of the law, the letter of Torah, but have forgotten the intimacy. So maybe this is part of the reason that there are so many people that are going, quote unquote, going back into churches, into observances that they, a number of years ago, would not have a part of, would actually be speaking totally against. And now, well, it's okay because we're finding something there. Let me lay it out to you like this. An intimacy that is based outside of the words of the Torah is, or can be, I'll choose my words very carefully, can be the same as an intimacy with a prostitute. That when we lay aside the words of the Torah, I know some of you are kind of reeling at what I just said, but when we lay aside the words of the Torah and we do not see the intimacy that is there, and they begin to look in other places, what can we find? We can find a business. We can find a contractual agreement. But we don't find the true intimacy. It's like if I said to my wife, you know, I know your birthday is now, but I want to change it to something else. And I know that our anniversary is here, but I want to change it to something else. And I know this is some things you like, but I want to do something different. You know, how is that relationship going to be messed up if all of a sudden it's not based upon a truth, but instead it's based upon a feeling, it's based upon an opinion, and then can become all kinds of things. So I would like to submit to you that as I read the Torah portion this week of Mishpatim, rulings. Wow, now doesn't that sound impressive? Rulings. I'm scheduled next week. I would really appreciate some prayer on this, because next week I'm supposed to pick up Hanok Young and spend most of the week with him. And in the wisdom of the Macon County Superior Clerk here, I've got it on my desk. I've got jury duty. How exciting is that? I mean, how many of us really get excited about jury duty? Hopefully nobody. If you do, you're strange. And so I've got jury duty, which is what? About the enforcement of rulings. Not too many people get excited about that. However, in the midst of these rulings, we can find an intimacy. And one that goes far beyond anything that we've ever experienced in systems that are outside of the Torah. Let's start it with this, that it says in verse 6, chapter 21, verse 6. There's a person, and I'm not going to go into all the issues here, but there's a person who is become a slave, a worker. Let's put it into modern terms. Slave, that word slave is pretty charged today. A person who is now an employee. And after 6 years of being an employee, the employer says, okay, your time, your debt to me is paid, and you're released. It's 6 years. If we go back to Genesis, of course, Genesis chapter 1, we see that the heavens and the earth were created in 6 days, and on the seventh day it says he rested, and we're called in the scripture to take the seventh day to set it apart, to call it kadosh, holy unto him, and that we are to take that day as unto him. The other 6 days we can go about producing. We can go about our normal life and doing what we need to do upon this earth. But that seventh day, which, by the way, if we compare Genesis chapter 1 to Isaiah chapter 66, the Shabbat is a Shabbat. If it changed, it was not God who changed it, folks. It was man. It was man's doctrine. Another issue. So this Hebrew slave, worker, has been in this person's home working for 6 days and now has the opportunity to go free. But it says no. The freedom outside of your house is not a freedom that I want. Because they understood, they remembered that the freedom that they once had outside of that house, 6 years earlier, that freedom put them into bondage. But when they came into the house, into the authority of the master's house, they've had the most wonderful years of their life, living within the boundaries of a structure. But the boundaries and the structure did not just cause this worker to enjoy the paycheck, to enjoy the benefits of the house, but the living within the instructions, the boundaries of that home, caused this person to fall in love with the master of the house. And so when given an opportunity at the end of 6 years, this person said, you know, if this is what I've enjoyed in the working, I wonder what I'm going to enjoy. I wonder what new levels there might be when I enter into that 7th day within this house. See, is it possible that in trying to come back to this place of living according to the instructions of the Torah, that it's been about working for it and not resting in it? So when given the opportunity to this person, their words were, Ahav Adon. I love my master. I mean, let me picture it this way. Is it possible that this is, and I'm not saying this as any type of doctrine, but let's just say that our redemption in Messiah, we begin this walk. And there comes a time somewhere along this walk that he says, you know, I've redeemed you, but walk however you want. If you want to walk in other things, just go ahead. It's okay. Walk however you want. You're free. You're free of all these things that we're like thinking about it and thinking, wait a minute, but when I walked like I wanted to walk, look where it got me. And we think about it and say, Adonai, I love my master. I love the house. I love the boundaries that are placed inside the house. I love the instructions of the house. And when given an opportunity to leave the house, it's like, no. It's part of a prayer that I've prayed at various places, and these words have probably had more impact than any words that I have ever said at a public or semi-public prayer time. These words are not original to me. I remember in a Nazarene church, I would get there in the morning and there was a bunch of older men, and that's when I was younger. Now I would, just be another one of the older men, but it's another subject. And we would gather and we'd kneel down in these metal chairs, and one of the men that was in that room, almost every Sunday morning, he would say these words, "It is a pleasure to serve you, sir." He didn't know, I guarantee he didn't know the word sir was the word Adon in Hebrew. It is a pleasure to serve you, sir. And I've used that in various places, and it is at times become a theme of a conference. Those words impacted somebody so much. Can we really say today, it is a pleasure to serve you, sir? And this person, this Hebrew slave, this Hebrew worker, is then taken to the door. And what would be upon the door? Well, as we read on, that would be where the mezuzah is. The words of the Shema. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That is the essence of what is in that little casing right there. And so the person would be taken to the door and their ear placed upon the door, and an awl would be put upon their door, and a hammer, and it's the first piercing. I'm not condoning any piercings here, guys, okay? I don't see that we should be doing this today. But in that day, this is what they would do, and it would place another hole in the earlobe of the person. What's the significance of this? That the it would be that this is just kind of my picture that I see, is that when the ear was placed on the doorpost next to where the mezuzah would be, and another hole was placed in the ear, it was as if the hearing of the person, the natural hearing, and the words of the Torah, of the instructions, are now so close together that our natural hearing is affected by His Word. Think of it this way. We've got, all of us probably have air conditioners in our houses, or heaters, or right now it's heaters. But in a heating system, what do you have? You have a filter. And that filter traps things that shouldn't go into the system. Because if that filter is not there, somebody says, well, this filter is dirty, it's trapped enough, I'm just going to throw it out and just leave it without. What happens? Well, all the particles go into the air conditioning system, and eventually you're going to be buying a new air conditioning system. On the other hand, if you don't clean the filter, if you don't replace the filter, it gets so clogged with all the stuff that no air gets in. Well, the same thing kind of holds true in our lives. The Torah should be our filter. The Word of God, is the Word of God your filter that keeps harmful particles out of your system? Think of it. And are there times that we need to go away, spend a little time privately with Him and say, my filter's a little clogged here. I need to get rid of some of that stuff. Or maybe it's even to the point of, I need to be living in a different place so my filter doesn't clog up as much. If you live next to a place that produces just constant dust and stuff in the air, maybe it's time to move. Move to a place that's a little bit cleaner. I don't know. But the Word, His Word is to be a filter to keep out particles from our system. The problem lies in a question. Do we know His Word well enough to use it as a filter? Ouch. Do we really know what His Word says? Do we spend enough time in His Word that when something comes at us, we can say, wait a minute, that needs to be filtered out. That doesn't need to be a part of my life because it is contradicting His Word. Or it's not lining up with His Word. And so everything that comes into our system is through the filter. Now, the rest of chapter 2, so see, here's what this whole section right here about the Hebrew worker, the Hebrew slave, comes down to this. Life is about loving Him. The Hebrew slave said, life is not going to be the same outside of this house. I can live on my own. I can have my own freedom. But I choose the Master's love over my own freedom. What an amazing concept. That I choose His love over my freedom. And so I make all of my decisions in life, God willing. I make all of my decisions in life based upon what will please Him, not what will please me. Because I love the Master and the house of the Master at such a level that His life, His love, His smile, His pleasure is placed at a level above mine. The rest of 21, chapter 22, is basically summed up in this. And I challenge you to read it, and not just read it, but read it in such a way that you stop and say, okay, if an ox gores a man, the ox is to be stoned. I don't have an ox, and I don't think that my ox that I don't have is going to stone somebody, and I really don't want. It would be illegal. I don't know. Instead of just going and going, well, that doesn't make any difference. Pray through these things. Pray through something like if someone removes a cover from a cistern or digs another one and fails to cover it. What does that mean to us? It means if you got a hole in the ground on your property and some kids are coming over to play, do something with the hole so that they don't get injured. It's very simple. Pray through these things and you'll find that every single one of them has an application for us today. Yeah, my favorite one is in chapter 22, verse 13 or 14, depending on your translation. It's if someone borrows something from his neighbor, put in lawnmower, weed eater, axe, cooking pan, I don't care. Put something in there. The Torah teaches us the very basis for our life. And in doing so, the end result is that we're pleasing Him. And I can tell you that the farther we get away from these words, and I've watched enough news in America to figure out that we're a long ways from these. When you can beat a cop, when you as an illegal into this country, someone who came in against the law can beat a police officer and then be released from prison and walk out with a gesture. We got a problem, folks. A problem that I don't see how it's possible for the United States of America to get back from this, no matter who is in the office of the president. But here is the solution. Okay, you want to call the governor of New York, the mayor of any, and just tell them, hey, I got a friend of mine that's got a solution. I can tell you how to solve the solution, how to solve the solution, how to solve the problem of our day with one verse. All it takes is one verse, Ecclesiastes. Yeah, probably a book you've read numerous times. I have. I love this book. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 11. Because the punishment decreed on an evil act is not promptly carried out, therefore people who plan to do evil are strengthened in their intentions. That one verse could solve the problems of the United States of America. That one verse. Why is it the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, is going in with such tremendous force? Right here. Because through the last years, a prime minister who is more concerned about keeping himself out of jail than the safety of the people. Yeah, I'll say that to his face if given the opportunity. A prime minister that was more concerned with keeping himself out of jail than the safety of the people did not execute judgment when rockets came out of Gaza. At one time, 1,400 rockets came out of Gaza, and there was not punishment for that. When terrorist ramming attacks, stabbings are happening in Israel, but yet there's not punishment for that. Oh, it's placating the media, but there is not eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. When that does not happen, you see the breakdown of a society. And this verse, ladies and gentlemen, is why there is a Gaza war today. And unless this verse is carried out, the children of the soldiers that are fighting today will fight another war. I'll move on. The farther we get from these words in Exodus, the more the confusion is. Let me cover just a few. Chapter 23, verse 2. Do not follow the crowd when it does what is wrong, and allow the popular view to sway you into offering testimony for any cause if the effect will be to pervert justice. This is a verse to hammer into our children. And I didn't say using words. This is a verse to hammer into our children and our grandchildren without using a single verbal word. That our actions, our lives should be such that someone would say of us, when asked, they would say, well, they don't go along with the crowd. The greatest, one of the greatest things I had happen, one of many that I had happen in Israel was I was in one of the stores talking to a friend of mine. And there were some other people in there, and one of them asked, about me, because this friend of mine we had kind of been conversing, and the person looked at me and said, well, what do you do? I mean, I'm not Jewish, and here I'm in Israel, walking around and doing. I was the purple cat, folks. In fact, I was probably the striped purple cat, and I'm fine with that. But one of the greatest compliments is this friend of mine, when someone asked me personally of what I did, they said, would you mind if I answered that for you? When someone else speaks of you, especially if, and this is true in Judaism, you do not flatter people in front of them. It's what people say behind your. It's not behind your back. It's what people say when you're not there that really has meaning. Following the crowd. I remember. I think it was the first debate, presidential debate. I actually had I actually watched part of it, just because occasionally it's nice to be entertained. But I watched, and I remember the moderator asked him a question, probably had to do with Trump or something. And here's 10 people talk about a 3-ring circus. These are circus monkeys up in front, and the moderator asked the presidential candidates a question. And almost every one of them looked to their side to see if someone else was raising their hand. When you have a presidential candidate who looks to someone else before they raise their hand about something, that person does not deserve the office. In fact, if you and I look to someone else besides God himself in making a decision, we need to ask ourselves some serious questions. The chapter goes on into Shabbat, into the festivals. These are the festivals of his house. This is his anniversaries, his Moedim, his days. And we should take pleasure in them. Instead of looking out the window at the neighbor's house. I mean, how many people are looking out the window going, wow, they've got a tree. I wish we could have a tree. Hey guys, do you think it'd be okay if we had a tree? We'll just name it something else. They're hunting eggs. They're dressing in costumes. Wow. I wish we could do that. Longing for your neighbor's house. Is that part of you shall not covet? I just want to go look at the lights. I think they're pretty. Okay? Wow. And then you come home and it's like, remember when we had lights? Remember when we had a tree? Wow. This house we're in is kind of confining. He doesn't allow us to do the things that other houses can do. Wonder what they're doing this morning. I wonder what they got this morning. Instead of looking and saying, Ahav Adon, I love my master. And I love this house. And I love the ways of this house. Because this house has so much meaning. This house is not just smoke and mirrors. This house is not a counterfeit love. This house is not on sand. This house is on a firm foundation. I'm just so happy to be in this house. Chapter 24. I need to get through this. Chapter 24, verse 7. Naaseh vanishma. It says, everything that Adonai has spoken, we will do and obey. Naaseh vanishma. That's a song that Barry Phillips, that's actually the intro to, I think it's the intro to Foundations for Life. We will do and we will obey. Let's take that word a little bit farther here. The word do is the word asa. Where do we see? Okay, let me test you. Where do we see the word asa the first time in Scripture? I'll give you a hint. Genesis, the garden, clothing. After Adam and Eve fell, it says he fashioned coats and brought them to them. He gave them a covering. And the word there is asa. It is literally translated, he brought life into. And the word of obey is shema. And so we are to do and we are to hear. Wait a minute. That sounds backwards. We are to bring life into what we hear. Right? That's what the word actually says. We are to bring life into what we hear. But shouldn't it be that we will hear and then bring life into it? Excuse me. So working through some of the final stages of jet lag and head cold. We will bring life into what we hear, and we're going to make a decision to bring life into it even before we hear it. Before we hear what we're to bring life into, we're going to go ahead and make a commitment to bring life into it. Now, guys, this goes totally against my personality. I'm a why person. You have to tell me why. And it's really funny because growing up, and my mother of blessed memory, I'm surprised did not put her in a grave earlier, but I was the why person. You had to tell me, my teachers had to tell me, and none of them could, because they just told me to do without telling me the why of doing. That's just my makeup. But when it comes to the Father, when it comes to my Creator, I set that part of my personality to the side. I didn't do it consciously, I don't think, but somehow subconsciously. And here's the main reason for this. People, I don't trust them. None of them. I don't trust people. It takes a long time for me to trust people. And the more people that I know, the longer it takes for me to trust them. Why? Because I know people. And you do too. You know what I'm talking about. And so when it comes to people, and a person telling me to do something, I want to go on the why train here for a little bit and figure out what's your motivation behind it. Because I'm not sure if I trust you in what you're wanting me to do, so I'm going to get that out of you before I invest me into this. But on the other hand, My trust in the Father is such, or let me rephrase that. My trust in the Father, I desire to be of such that I never question him. It's just like, you got this. And whatever it is you're asking, that's the word Hineni, whatever it is you're asking, my decision is already yes. Because I trust that everything that you say, everything about your house, everything about the instructions of your house is for my good and my benefit and my prosperity. So here's the strange one. We are asked by him to bring life into his word through what we do. Chew on that one for a moment. I'll give it to it a different. Through our lives, we bring life into his words. Really? Through our lives, we bring life into his word. He spoke, and there were 6 days. But there had to be a people that could work in those 6 days for this earth to produce. So the life that is because we enter into his word. Shabbat. He spoke the Shabbat into existence, but it's not until until we enter into that Shabbat that we bring life into that Shabbat. The festivals, the dietary laws, whatever it is, we bring life into that. Now, lastly, and this is where we get into the place of intimacy. Chapter 24, starting in verse 9. Moshe, Aaron, Adav, Avihu, and 70 of the leaders went up, and they saw the Elohim of Israel. Under his feet was something like a sapphire stone pavement, as clear as the sky itself. He did not reach out with his hand against these notables of Israel. On the contrary, they saw Elohim even as they were eating and drinking. Now, remember that these are the same ones that will make the golden calf. The same ones that will make the golden calf are the ones that are here, in the presence of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. The word they saw Elohim is not the word Ray they perceived, but it is the word Hazah. It is the word which means they gazed. They were in this some kind of a perpetual. Have you ever looked at something and it was just so overwhelming that all you could do is gaze? Yeah, that kind of thing. You just enamored. You can't believe what your eyes are seeing. It is so beyond beautiful. This is what Shaul said when he says, eye is not seen, ear is not heard, neither is it entered into the heart of man the things that he has prepared for us. When we gaze into what he has prepared, when we see what he has prepared for us. I was talking to Kathy the other day about the word mansions. King James, it's not the word mansions, room. And when we see the room that he has prepared for us, you ever watch some of these shows about mansions? About these wonderful places, vacation areas, and you're like, wow. And so somehow you read King Jimmy and it's like, oh, it's going to be like, no. When you see what he has prepared for you and you gaze into that, it's going to make this mansion that you've been so enamored about look like a fishing shack. That sounded really southern. A fishing shack. It is going to look like a homeless place compared to what he has prepared for you and I. It says they gazed into the Creator Elohim. It does not say Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. It says they gazed into Elohim. Take that back to Genesis. We take that over In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. All things were made by him and through him, and without him nothing was made. I believe this to be the manifestation of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh upon this earth in Messiah, that they gazed into the eyes of Messiah. And it says that they're, even as they were eating and drinking, we figure, okay, well, there's this banquet. Okay, I've been to the hotels in Israel, there's this banquet. There's this buffet. There's all this food that's out there. I mean, this, this is like whatever buffet you've been to. This is beyond it. They were just sitting there, just eating and drinking and having a merry old time. Well, where did it say that was food? Oh. Where does it say that they were eating food and drinking Israel wine? Does it? Because, see, that's our issue. Thinking in the natural, trying to take the things of the spiritual and explaining them in the natural. Whereas the things of the natural should help us to explain the spiritual. I don't have time for that one. But we take the things of the spiritual and try to bring them down to ourselves. Do you think they were really, enamored over the steak and the falafels and the schnitzel and the halva? And no. What about it if we looked at it like this? They gazed at Elohim even as they were eating and drinking of him. See, when our desire to gaze into him becomes as important as the sustenance of food and water, that's when you'll love the master of the house. Lastly, come up to the mountain and stay there. I will give you the stone tablets with the Torah and mitzvot I have written on them, so that you can teach them. What is written does not change. This is not an anti-Jewish statement in any way. But I've learned much from the words of the oral Torah, the writings. I've learned much from them. But I do not hold them at the same level as I do the written words. Now, I understand that the written words that I have been, we've got translations and all of these things that have happened, and I do my very best to go back to the best translations. There are translations I don't use. There's translations I would just, I wouldn't even open it because it's so far off. But what I have is, by my research, the best that I can have. It's as close to the written that I can get. And the scripture that I have in front of me, this, I still don't like the term, the Complete Jewish Bible with duct tape. I've had this scripture since 1998 or 99. No wonder it's falling apart. I've had this same book for about 25 years. And the same words that were written in it 25 years ago are the same words that are written in it today. It has not changed. I don't know about what's on here, this phone. I don't know about other things, but I know that this book and what is written on here has not changed. When it comes to commentaries, when it comes to oral traditions, have you ever played telephone? You say something to somebody, and then they say it to somebody else, and by the time it gets back to you, you can't figure out what was said. That's kind of how it is when we trust what people say instead of what God says. I can learn from people's commentaries, and I do. I can base my life upon what is here. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Have a blessed, prosperous week. Bezrat Hashem, God willing. See you again next week. Maybe I'll be 100% back. Until then, be strong.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha Shalom.